Hello everyone, and I am sorry this is not going to be a very great video. It's a long chapter and I'm going to try and keep it kind of short. It also feels weird to be talking about it without having your feedback and talking to you. So although I have done this before, this is a little different. So anyway, so chapter 4, you were supposed to do chapter 3 as a quiz online, so make sure you look in the hybrid 2 folder, which everything will be due by next Tuesday night. And then week 3 folder will open up next Tuesday morning, so you can start week 3, because technically we're in week 2. And it's sad that we're not going to meet. It's such a short semester. Okay, so chapter 4 is looking at worldview, which is the cultural explanations of life and death. And we cover this because it does really impact the way we communicate with each other, how we see the world. Our faith system has a lot to do, and especially some religions, it really does impact things that they do. So some key ideas we're going to talk about here: worldview and culture, manifestations of worldview, religion, and an overview of major world religions. And I am looking at my PowerPoint as I speak and also looking in my book, so please bear with me. I'll do my best here. All right, so we get to the concept of worldview, and we think of worldview as how we view the world. And everyone interprets things that they see, reality, through the way that they relate to the world around them, and a lot of that comes from some of their belief systems, family, and their culture itself. Some topics of worldview: we have the idea of what is the purpose of life. We all wonder, and that's something regardless of religion, whatever, we all kind of wonder, why are we here? People wonder, is the world ruled by law, by chance, or God? What is the right way we should be living? How did the universe start? How did life begin? What happens when we die? What are the sources of knowledge? What is good and bad, right or wrong? And these are basics regardless of faith or anything. These are basic things that everyone, I think, kind of wonder about. So when we talk about worldview and culture, culture is a big part of our worldview, because if you think about it, I mean, culture has to do with shared values, beliefs, and norms within a group of people. So obviously, how those people think is going to affect how you see the world as well. So we have this collective wisdom from our culture, our group, and that kind of tells us the things that we should do and not do and what to believe. So manifestations, how do we get to the idea of a worldview? So, and it also deals with how we're going to communicate within it as well. So there's a link between worldview and behavior. And we think about the business arena. You see some businesses and some cultures, I've talked about how it's more about getting involved with the person, not just the business. Some companies, it's strictly business. You don't worry about the person, and that's going to come from part of their worldview, their culture, their religious beliefs, all of that mixed. So we have the foundational business conduct. We have the religious and philosophical beliefs. But it's also role perceptions, behavior codes, ethics, and how economic activities are conducted. So constructs of worldview: we have religion, which is that faith system. We also have secularism, and this is where you reject miracles and supernatural beings. You have a set of standards as far as right or wrong, ethics based on humanism, and then there's the belief that there's finality of death. So and that, especially, that goes into more atheism. So then we have spirituality, and there are a lot of people claim that they're spiritual, and whether they use it the right way or not, but generally with spirituality, it's more individual. It's self-discovery. It's not just who you are, but who you choose to be. You value silence, solitude, quiet, meditation as a way to kind of find that self-discovery. You're mindful, you observe your environment and then how you should behave in that environment. You engage in self-expression. You may have yoga, dance, music, other such activities, because they're a good way to meditate and kind of looking within. And you want simplicity. You don't want things to be complex. And then we get to the idea of religion, and this is where we get into a lot more different groups here. And this comes from the Latin religere, which means to tie. And if you think about it, religion does tie us to the beliefs and whatever deity, and even to our community. So we have religion and the sacred. We have it provides explanations, as values to the unexplainable, provides principles and beliefs for issues regarding the nature of life and death. It kind of helps with the idea when we wonder what our purpose is. Religion kind of solves that for us. Religion and personal conduct, where we get the notions of right and wrong, is definitely a big part of our religion. It gives us the rules, how we should behave. It responds to our human need to understand purpose of life. And we think about religion in the 21st century. This is where this whole globalization we've talked about, the idea of intercultural communication, is really having a big impact on how religion is progressing in the 21st century. But there's, and a lot of cultures are getting where religion does not belong in other, they're kind of separating, and yet there's some religions where it's a big part of even government. And we are seeing conflict in religion, which has been, as long as there's been any kind of faith system, we've had conflicts throughout thousands of millennia, because people always try to, put their beliefs and think their beliefs are best. So we do see some violence among people of various religious convictions. Elements of religion, pretty much all religions, there are basic elements you will see. The speculation, the idea that it helps explain the unexplainable. We think about the myths we learned in high school, the creation myths. It was all about trying to understand the things we couldn't explain, and especially before science. We have sacred writings. So we have various books, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, Vedas, all these different things out there. We have rituals, and each religion, usually there may be some kind of certain rituals that either individually or through the family or through a group of people, and it's a way of just reaffirming those important beliefs. And you also have the idea of ethics, what's right or wrong. It kind of determines our behavior, what we should and shouldn't do. So the book only covers 6. They mention, I can't remember now, they mention that there are 41,000 different Christian denominations, but there are also just thousands of actual different religions. I'm sorry, I was trying to look at the book to see how many, but there's so many different. So what they did is they stuck to the main, like 6 of the top, either because they have the most number of people, or they are just spread around a bigger part of the world. So we're going to start with Christianity. Some of the major beliefs: they believe in a single God, created the universe, gave the world his only Son. Jesus Christ gave his life on the cross. Biggest problem for humans is that we are sinners. Christianity has a worldview that looks at both the religious and the secular dimensions, because Jesus did live among the people, suffered, understood human pain, problems, temptations, and there's belief that man and women were created in God's image. And here God is personal. We believe, Christians believe that God is a part of our life, and somehow having some say in it, or determination. Cultural expressions of Christianity. If you look at Christianity community, they have the church, and that's how you get fellowship and community support. You also, though, have the idea that individuals are unique, so there isn't this whole all Christians are the same. They do get into the individualism. If you think about kind of where it's prevalent in the United States, Europe especially, although there are many Christians in other parts of the world too, though, it kind of makes sense that there would be this idea of individualism, but because they believe that it's a personal experience with God and Jesus. They do stress hard work, doing good deeds, helping others, having in the future, having courage when things get tough. And their idea of death is that there is an afterlife, and you either go to heaven or hell. Judaism, and this is kind of before Christianity, because same God, that basically I think it's safe to say that they have that same God, difference being that they don't believe as Jesus as a savior, but the Jews were supposedly the ones who crucified Jesus. So, but their beliefs are that there's one universal eternal God, the creator, sovereign overall. You must be obedient to the commandments in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. Same set of commandments that Moses gave, and you actually see that in Islam too. They mention it in the Quran about the 10 commandments through Moses. Muhammad admonishes you to. So we see that through these 3 religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, about the idea of the 10 commandments through Moses. Humans are inherently pure and good and are given free will, and that's kind of one of the key things with the idea of the faith systems with God, is that they believe he does give goodwill to people. I mean, free will, which determines why you do right or wrong, and the idea of having the commandments to have a guideline. Humans can live anywhere they choose and only have to bear the consequences. There are 3 main branches of Judaism. You have the Orthodox, and they stay very much into the traditional religious teachings and that you find in all the old writings, and you can notice them. Usually they have the different hair and beards, the clothing, the hats. You have the Reform Jews, and this is where in the late 18th century they're trying to modernize some of the Jewish branches just so that they could assimilate a little bit better into the non-Jewish communities without losing their own Jewish identity. And if you think about the persecutions that Jews have gone through, it kind of makes sense that they would try to assimilate a little bit, just to maybe not go through as much of that. And then you have the conservative Judaism. They go through the rules, the rituals as the Orthodox, if you wish to maintain your identity, but it's maybe, I'm thinking it's maybe not as traditional as the Orthodox. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to look where I'm at. So, and then some of the cultural expressions in Judaism, we talked about the persecution, the idea they've gone through opposition, persecution through most of their history, and they have a hard time trusting non-Jews, which kind of makes sense. But part of why I think they are still around and so strong is because they do tend to work together. And I'm sorry I'm getting off track, but when you think about the Holocaust and Hitler, upset that Jews were doing well because they always turned to each other during hard times, and I think that what has made them so persistent through everything they've gone through. They do work together. So learning, they also stress education. So this is where in so many faith systems we see where maybe only the males are educated. Here the Jews would have everyone is educated, and I think that's probably been a strong point for them. Cultural expressions, they have justice, the idea of being moral and being good toward others. Family is definitely a big part of their culture and community, and you have not only your family, but you have the larger Jewish community, so that they worked well, they stay together, they work through things, and I think that's probably a good thing about them. Jewish notions about death, they believe it's natural. The Torah doesn't really refer to anything about the afterlife, which is a little different from the other 2 groups, but the role of family community is very important in that. And then we go to Islam now, which came after Christianity and Judaism, but it's still the idea of the same God, and the idea here was trying to get the Christians who are going more into Jesus and all to kind of come back to the idea of God, the only God. Muhammad received revelation from God in 610. The messages are written in what's called the Quran, equivalent of the Bible and the Torah. They established a social order that became Islam. Community and religion were one here, and this is a little closer to the Jews, the idea that community and religion, you work together and stay together as a community as well. Muhammad established the city-state of Medina, and they used the missionary style to spread Islam. Core beliefs, the idea of one God they call Allah. There's a belief in angels. As I mentioned, the Quran is their sacred text. There's the idea Islam actually means submission, submitting to God and His will. And some of their core beliefs is the idea of predestination. God is aware of everything. He's the creator of everything. He's documented all that has happened, so that pretty much everything that happens is God's will. Whatever God wills to happen, happens. Whatever he wills not to happen, does not happen. Kind of pretty simple. Some of their core beliefs, the idea of judgment. If you do good deeds on earth, then you'll dwell in paradise. If you seek a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted, and you'll be one of the losers. Those who have disbelieved and died in disbelief, the earth will not accept any of them if they were offered as a ransom. They have a painful punishment. They will have no helpers. So again, as with the Christianity and the Judaism, you see the idea of doing good deeds and being good to others as part of the reward system. They have 5 pillars of Islam. Their statement of belief, they call it Shahada. You have prayer or Salat, the idea of alms, giving to the poor, helping others, fasting, especially during the month of Ramadan. They do have another Eid as well. And then the pilgrimage, or what they call Hajj, to Mecca, which is, again, where Muhammad started with his messages. Cultural expressions. There's been a lot, the media has really done a lot to kind of make people scared of Islam, which I think is sad that any religion should be feared. So they talk about the jihad. There are actually 2 types of jihad. You have the internal jihad, which is where you're kind of fighting kind of things against yourself, and you need to get yourself closer to God. And then you have the outer jihad, which is more when you feel that you are being threatened, your religion is being threatened. And they try to say, and this is where some of the terrorists are trying to make it, that the West is attacking Islam, and so they use that, the extremists, as a way to pull in other people, which I think is sad, because that's not, because it is also a sin to kill innocents. So, and they are killing innocent people, and that is not part of Islam. It's a complete way of life. Here, government, public, business, everything. It's all, Islam runs all of it. It's all together, which is different from a lot of other religions. Gender, as with Christianity, Judaism, there are specific roles that women play. I will say that, having read the Quran myself, there is actually rules about how women are entitled to inheritances, property. They were allowed to vote. There are other things. So, but I think you'll notice a lot of the cultures, and gender is just another whole. But Islam is actually going through a lot of changes as well. A lot of countries trying to get women educated and such. I would say they're maybe behind the other religions, but they're trying to catch up. But I will say, from things that I've read, that a lot of Middle Eastern women, we have to be careful that we don't put Western ideas of what women should be onto these Middle Eastern women, because that's what I hear when I talk to different women there, is that, you know, maybe we don't approve of the way that they live, but there are some things that they like about it, but there are obviously changes that they need as well to protect them more in some ways. And that's more of a cultural thing, not a religious thing. Let's see. So culture expression, we go on the idea of death here, as we mentioned, the idea of judgment and reward. This is where closer to the Christianity belief, as far as there's a day of judgment, and according to how you lived. And their idea is that if you say you're a Muslim but you don't live the Muslim way, then you're a hypocrite, and that's not going to, it's not just about saying how you are, it's about also living the life. And they have that day of judgment, resurrection of people resurrected for God's judgment according to their beliefs and deeds. And that's kind of similar to the Christians too. Hinduism, this is another very, I think, one of the faiths we hear about more out of others. And we associate it mostly with India, but obviously it's in other places as well. So here there's no central founder. They traced it back to about 4,000 years ago, when some light-skinned Aryan Indo-European tribes invaded what is now northern India. They moved into the Indus Valley, And then here the culture is actually blended instead of, which is kind of, I think, nice to hear. Instead of like attacking and taking over, they blended. And they shared customs, traditions, rites, symbols, and myths. And then they had the communication of sacred texts, which is probably mostly oral, spoken. So some of their sacred texts, they have the Vedas, which actually means hearing. And again, if you think of the oral tradition, that kind of makes sense. And here they have hymns, and the idea of some of their beliefs and their philosophical maxims, spiritual guidance. You have the Upanishads, and this is somewhere around the 800-400 BCE. These books, their prose and vice, they're highly metaphysical, and have a lot to do with shaping the Hindu beliefs, the core of what would become modern Hinduism. The idea of reality being undivided at its most basic level to a renunciation of worldly goods. So a little bit more, it's about the spiritual and not material goods. We had the Bhagavad Gita. These are 3 courses. You have the discipline of knowledge, which is the jnana yoga, the discipline of action, which is the karma yoga, and the discipline of devotion, which is the bhakti yoga. So meditation, all of that would be a big part of their faith system. Core beliefs, the divine is in everything. There's an interconnectedness between time and space. So pretty much you can see God in everything. There's an ultimate reality. The physical world is not the only reality. Brahman, the ultimate level of reality, the philosophical absolute, serenely blissful, beyond all ethical or metaphysical limitations, and there are multiple paths to getting to your spirituality. So they don't have like this where some of the other religions have more of a community core type where you have share a lot of things. I think this is more of a definitely more personal experience. Each person is going to experience their own kind of faith and beliefs as they follow this. Cultural expressions, they see it as a complete way of life. It pervades every part of your life. The things you do, how you do things are going to come about because of these beliefs. They talk about dharma, which is how people live and treat each other, and then karma, the idea that reaction and action has good or bad consequences. So we use karma a lot lightly, but for them it's a true, if you're a good person, your karma is going to bring you good rewards. If you are a bad person doing bad things, then karma is going to have negative consequences, which kind of makes sense in some places too. There are 4 stages of life. They say that most people only get through the first 2. The first is that you are a student learning about, I'm sorry, trying to find where I'm at.